I'm Ben Johnson, your host for the Experience of God. Today I'm talking with Shirley Chambers. She has insights into life, meaning, and destiny. I believe it will challenge you. Join me. I am certainly happy to talk with you, Shirley Chambers. It's a wonderful morning for me. I want to begin this conversation with you with a question all of us ask. What is the purpose of life? I look around your studio here, I see different symbols from different faiths, so I'm led to believe you have looked at all faiths and come with a full answer to that. Fuller answer, maybe.
I would say fuller. I don't think it's completely full because I think we're constantly rediscovering where that purpose is leading to. But to me, simply said, the purpose of existence is the expression of divine life through us and into our lives. And working with each other, respect for each other, and in fact enjoying the life that we're living.
In order to do that, we have to come into that stream of purpose, into that awareness of the divine. Is that not right? That's
very true.
And would you talk with me about some of your experiences in becoming aware?
I think it is in living life. We can amass a great deal of understanding. We can read self-help books. We can read textbooks. And while that may be stimulating, is anything that comes quickly, it goes just as quickly. I think it involves a process of first looking at life as it is, secondly beginning to understand ourselves as well as that divine expression under whatever guise, whatever name you call it, God, divinity, the universe, and then allowing ourselves to become receptive to that flow, to that impression, you might say. And that takes time and effort in focusing upon that prayer, meditation, self-analysis in many ways. So I think all of those, it's a difficult journey to describe because it becomes very individual.
And it's a journey all the way, isn't it? It's not just you get on a journey and get it over with. It's your whole life.
It's continuing. As I said, the purpose continues to evolve, to change as we evolve and change.
If I am a seeker and I come to you and say, Shirley, where do I begin to get my life together? What would you suggest to me?
I would probably suggest that you take the Kabbalah course. Because it provides all of that. It is a synthesis of philosophy, psychology, theology, and science. So it brings back together into a collective unity, you might say, of all these aspects which have divided themselves.
Okay, if I start with learning the Kabbalah course, over here though is my experience of that. How would you help me get from here to here, or pull those two things together like that? Because I know that's what your intention is.
Yes, but the Kabbalah is a tool for doing that. It of itself, using the process, brings that together. You begin to, you might say, organize your inner world, your soul, with the outer world experience. And it's a process much like a physician completes an educational process whereby he's able to perform heart surgery.
Now, I have to back up a little bit. I'm talking to you at a late stage of your journey.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you born and what did you start with as the rudiments of this pathway of life?
It began actually quite young. I was born in the Allegheny Mountains of Pennsylvania in a small, relatively small town. I had a stepmother who was a real fan of the Science of Mind, Charles Fillmore. She also got Fate magazine at that time, which was a very popular magazine on the paranormal. And of course, as I grew up, from about the age of 10, I had access to those magazines. I had a natural affinity, as I discovered later, for working with animals. And I began to realize that I had some form of communication, which further prompted my access into the paranormal. And subsequently, like most people, I started reading books. I started mostly philosophy, and then I began to bring into practice that which I read and applying it. So it started there, basic.
You fascinated me there for a moment. I have to know about this affinity for animals and this communication with animals. Tell me, how did you discover that? What was it like?
Well, interestingly enough, and I want to preface this by saying I never arrived at anything intending to do so. It sort of opened a door. And I began my vocational career as in electrical estimating for an electrical contractor, which now I realized helped me understand energies, polarity, unseen energies that we work with. I acquired a dog along this way, a very rare dog, and I was encouraged to show that animal. And as I did, I began to be very successful. Subsequently, I became licensed by the American Kennel Club as a licensed handler. Jokingly, they always said I had a green thumb with animals, that the animal always performed in a way that I expected him to, he or she to. So that led to my doing workshops on communication with animals, which further led into nonverbal communication with anyone who was unable to verbally communicate, including stroke patients, certain children. I began doing some classes in Atlanta with those who had schools for special needs children, special ed.
So the same dynamic that you learned in working with your dog was the same dynamic that you utilized in working with people who could not speak.
It began the career, and I began teaching in Pennsylvania, this nonverbal communication. I did energy classes with children. And so subsequently, in 1980, I decided to move to Georgia.
I can't let this go right now. Tell me a little bit more of what you did with this dog that was nonverbal communication to get across what you wanted him or her to do.
First thing you have to do is have faith in your own self and the expecting the animal to perform and do as you, I don't want to say visualize, as you intend. I never doubted. Most people doubt. They'll say sit, and the next thing in their mind is, oh, he's not going to sit. You can't do that. You can't waver. I've always had the ability to focus very strongly on what I was doing, and I realized that goes right down the leash to the animal that you're working with. And that animal will immediately respond. If you want to call it the thoughts in your head is the best way to describe it. You've been working with people in animals, which I still do to some extent. I use a visualization technique. But the most important thing is the belief in yourself. That's where it starts.
That I am transmitting to you the desire that I have,
right,
and I believe you're going to do
right,
what I want you to do.
And that's easier said than done.
Okay.
Because most people doubt their own authority.
Okay, I got that point. I want to go back to one other thing you said, that your mother got a lot of paranormal literature. That's an odd word maybe to some people who are sharing this conversation with us. Tell me what that is and what your experience of paranormality was.
Well, Fate Magazine was a magazine that dealt with UFOs, the psychic senses, clairvoyance, clairaudience, mediumship. And of course, it struck my curiosity. What's this about?
I think all of us who've run into that,
right,
at least I would say I have those same questions.
But I went beyond that to where does this all stem from? Rather than looking at each individual aspect, my curiosity was what's the root of this? Where did it start? How did these people move into these various areas? And of course, they had a lot of stories in that magazine about events that happened to people that were above normal or metaphysical, meaning above the physical. But I never looked at it and became involved in any one of those issues. I realized they had to stem from a common source. And that began my goal. And basically, in looking at most philosophy, in one way or another, it's describing that goal. You know, we can go back to the very beginning of ancient Greece. The Oracle of Delphi said, "Man, know thyself."
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? It doesn't mean to define yourself. It doesn't mean to identify yourself with your title, your job. In fact, knowing you really can't describe.
Yes. Now, paranormal doesn't mean abnormal.
No, it means beyond the normal.
And along or over it
Right.
in some way.
Somewhat the same as metaphysics.
Yes.
Above the
Above
realm
physics.
of what physicists can detect.
Right. Now, I interrupted your story when you got to Atlanta.
I subsequently came to Atlanta. I had a business partner at the time, and our goal was to establish at that point a community, a subdivision in North Georgia. And we purchased about 130 some acres outside of Jasper. In the interim, I began to be invited to teach in Atlanta. There was an institution called the Foundation of Truth.
Mm-hmm.
They shared the mansion on 15th Street with the Daughters of the American Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And so I began again teaching classes there. At the same time, I had also been traveling and teaching classes. And several instances, and particularly one, I was in Omaha, Nebraska, and I had a large group of people there, and I was lecturing on not nonverbal communication. I did a workshop, but I was lecturing more on energy to realize that we're all magnetic, energetic beings. Where does that energy come from? Where does the life come from? And I was questioned in the audience, did you ever think about teaching Kabbalah? My immediate answer was no. Didn't even think about it. Well, I've learned never to say that.
But you thought about it right that moment, didn't you, when they asked you?
I did.
Yeah.
And then at the classes in Atlanta that I was teaching, I had several students. That usually to me indicates when a message comes from more than one direction that you need to listen.
Pay attention to it.
And my instant response was, there's a ton of books written on it. Read them. They said, no. Why don't you begin to tell us of what it involves and how you approach it? Because most people understood I approach things quite differently than what you might say the norm. And so I said, okay, let's try this. I've always been willing to walk through a door.
And one was opening.
One open.
Or cracking.
You can
Cracking
always go
open.
back.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I began to do a lesson a week. At least maybe once a week. Sometimes it took 2 weeks. I didn't want to read the books to be influenced. I had to know certainly definitions of certain aspects of the tree of life, which is really the glyph of the entire understanding contained in what we call the mystical teachings.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can't apply it to life, if something doesn't help you connect with your own spirit, with divinity, and bring that into your life, and of course if you do, your life achieves a state of joy or of balance, it's useless.
Right.
You trash it. So I began to write the lessons, bring them to the class. The class would comment. I would rewrite the lessons, and it took about 3 years to do 2,000 pages.
Mm.
That was it began in 1982. And 1991, I rewrote the whole course. Another 3 years, another 2,000 pages.
Yeah, that's 20 years ago.
It began 20 years ago.
You've been on this pathway for quite a while then.
Well, let's say probably 40 years at least.
You made a statement a moment ago that's very revealing to me. You were saying about the things we believe, various and sundry things we believe, if it doesn't apply to life, if it doesn't make a difference, trash it.
Right, because what is life? You know, life is divine expression.
Well, I come from a Christian background,
Mm-hmm.
and when you said that, it made me wonder if the church, through the years, has stacked one set of teaching on top of another set of teaching that people often could not apply to what happens Monday through Saturday. They just didn't know what happened, what it was about.
Correct. It was most go to church, as we do, and we take that time, special time, to honor God. and in devotion. But then it's like you said, when we walk out, then what happens?
Yeah. And people are not taught to pay attention to what happens so that they might see the divine in it. That's troublesome.
True.
That's
It
troublesome.
didn't start that way. I think if you go back centuries ago and read the more ancient literature, you'd see it provided that. But it's a two-way street. I've always been going to write a book called Religion's Not a Dirty Word, because a lot of people come here and they're discouraged. And I try to help them see the value of the foundation that they built their life on. I was raised in Catholicism, and I value that foundation very highly. I think that the purpose of religion in the beginning was, in its own way, to help people understand, first of all, life, and secondly, their relationship with the source of life.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, it detracted from that. It began to establish a codependency, so to speak, between the structures and the people who participated in those structures, to where now it's fear-based. If I don't do this, something bad will happen to me.
Yeah. I think you have analyzed that correctly, and it's tragic that religion has sunk to that. We're here in the Karin Kabalah Center today.
It's Karin, yes.
Karin. And this center, tell me what happens here.
What happens, well, first we have several teachers who present other teachings. We have Mr. Agarwal who presents Vedanta, which really goes back to that source. That the Kabbalah course is basically our main focus. It's a 2.5-year process of development, inner development. People will come to me and say, what's Kabbalah do for me? The same as they go to churches, what can you do for me? My answer is nothing. It's a tool that you use for yourself. It's something that you have to apply yourself to understand life as it is depicted within the mystical teachings, and then begin to live it, not just once a week, become devoted to it.
Right. Shirley, would you take one Kabbalah teaching and define it for me, and then illustrate how I would use that next week in my life?
Okay, a basic teaching, a simple teaching is we've got 4 worlds, we call it. 4 levels of expression, of experience. We have a physical, we get up, we walk around. We have a formative world called emotional, intellectual, that pretty much governs where we walk to. But then that's usually the extent of what most people can accept in their lives. There's a next world going in or up, whichever you choose, is called creative. You can create a thought in your mind. If I tell you to think about a party, immediately you can start thinking about a party. That can come down to how you feel about the party, into the sensate, what we call it.
And where the party's going to be.
Which result in the physical, having a party.
Yeah.
But there's the highest level, and that's called the spiritual level. The growth or our connection with divinity that is enhanced even by the party. It doesn't mean that everything in our life can relate to the enhancement of that connection. And we don't walk around like saints. We don't walk around in sackcloth and ashes. I think divine life was meant to experience our existence in a state of what you might say joy, not happiness essentially, but in the joy at the event of life itself. So that's a basic premise. Now let's look at these levels. Are you on a physical level succumbing to erroneous thinking, erroneous beliefs in the intellect? The intellect can crystallize. Or are you on the other side of motivation and desire? Are your desires to gain more power, more money? Then above all that is the creative. What thoughts in your mind influence those desires and that intellect? Is it to need for yourself to be recognized, or is it based on fear? I won't have enough. I can't get enough. But all the while, the essence of our being is still the very highest expression of God. If God is everything there is, which most texts state, and He's omniscient, omnipresent, and you look at the world around you, you wonder, what happened?
Yeah.
What happened? You know, that expression from the highest level that spiritual expression, has come through thoughts that are not appropriate for it. Thoughts that say I have to have this, thoughts that say I have to earn more money. And not that earning money is the problem, it's the intent for doing so, which again stimulates that formative level of the intellect, motivation, how I can get more, can I cheat somebody, can I find a way to make more money? And of course then it all results in your action.
Now, as you're describing that, immediately it comes to me that there's a lot of conflict between these various levels. And that one thing's pulling you one way, something else pulling you another way. Then there's confusion in your mind.
And look at the world.
Yeah, that's right. Now, what's your role in helping me sort that out? I come to you and say, I'm facing this. I see this. How do you see your role in helping me through that?
I help you see the choices. I help you understand what level that you are expressing your individualism from, and help you see perhaps that you have a choice, that there are other ways. In the process of the teachings, in the process of the Kabbalah using it as a tool, you arrive at what we call clear gnosis, clear knowing. Back to the Oracle of Delphi, man know thyself. And I want to use an example of that. I use this in our classes to say what a mystic is, because some people think it's a very mysterious thing. And I use a very physical example of a mystic, and that is that you know what an orange tastes like. I know what an orange tastes like. Now you tell me what it tastes like.
Tastes like orange.
But what's an orange taste like?
That's right.
See?
Right.
You know that. Now take that same idea of the orange and substitute divinity, God, our own essence. Once you taste that, once you reach that taste through a spiritual developmental process, then it flows automatically. The creative level with the thought influences the desire and intellect, which in turn influences physical living.
You know, as I listen to you talk about that, there's so much in the church's history and background and story that overlaps all the things you're saying. At least it seems to me.
It does.
And have we misused that? Have we ignored that?
Well, I use an example of, you know, this traces back, if you go to the Old Testament, to the time of Moses, the bondage in Egypt. We're still in Egypt. You know, we haven't crossed the promised land yet, right? Reached it yet. Right now we're sort of crossing a desert if you look at life. Life is rather barren for most people. And so I think beginning at some point in the history of this planet, man, I call it a universal Peter Pan complex. It's easier to blame somebody else or to have somebody else tell you how to live. Because if it doesn't work out, you can blame them, first of all. You don't take responsibility. And I think it's something that occurred here due to the choice that mankind had. If you look about 500 BC, this was ever the experience of Moses, which dates, you know, are not always accurate, about 1400 BC. Things did not get better. We know the story of the crossing of the desert where the people became fearful, went back to the old ways of worshiping the golden calf. So about 500 BC, and around 100 years at that time, there was a wave come in to this planet of philosophers and spiritual leaders. You had Lao Tse, Buddha, Confucius,
right,
Pythagoras, Socrates, Aristotle, Plato.
Is that what some call the Axle Age?
I think so.
Yeah.
But who listened? Plato's work was really based on the Vedas. His ideals and forms follow the Kabbalistic teachings. But there was a point in growing up in society, in mankind, just as we see today. A teenager has a choice of becoming an adult and assuming those responsibilities or acting like a child. Now he has peer pressure and he has parents who sort of push him. Nobody pushes us.
That's right. We need that help. I think what I'm hearing you say too is that that's the kind of help you want to offer people. And I don't want to wind this conversation up before you share with us how the center here, what it offers and how it offers it to anyone who is interested in learning.
Okay, and the most important thing to know is they don't have to have what is known as an esoteric background. In fact, I had someone approach me and said, I'm an atheist. I said, that's great, you know, preconceived ideas. What it does is provide the process. It's based on meditation, understanding, the use of archetypes. Carl Jung was one of my heroes because he brought forward the power of archetypes. Mm-hmm. We see archetypes continuously in our lives, which help us renew that connection with the reality of our existence. So, along with the Course, we have those teachers who can, again, explain more thoroughly. It's very psychological. It's based on the human nature, to understand human nature, to understand ourselves.
I like very much what you're saying, and I think I have to enroll in the course because I want to get more of that. But I want to ask you, what you have said so far is it's highly focused on the individual and the individual pathway, etc. Is there a way beyond that into the formation of community and in reaching out to others in some way of
They do.
self-giving?
The people that completed are in many avenues. I've got physicians. They take and apply that in their work. It is a becoming. How you express it's individual. And by the same token, if we transcend religion, we transcend the structures. I honor all structures. Because I can see within those the essence. Is like I may have mentioned to you before, we have cups of different designs, the structures. We're dying of thirst because we're arguing over the structures and not letting the cup fill with the essence that's in it, regardless of the religion.
Shirley, this has been such an intriguing conversation. It seems like 5 minutes, but it's been longer. Thank you very much for sharing yourself, your insights with us, with me, and with many other people.
You are most welcome, and we're here to share those with anyone at any time.
Thank you. Here we are in the bookstore of the Karin Kabalah Center. That was an amazing interview that I shared with Shirley Chambers. She has written a book on Kabalistic healing as well as other things. I think you would benefit from her teaching, perhaps. She helps find the path. I'm Ben Johnson with the Experience of God next time.